So it's 4 o'clock, so let's start with this presentation. We have a lot to cover today, and I want to leave enough time to answer questions at the end. So let's start with this presentation. Today is the part one of a two-series presentation, two parts presentation on post-completion optional practical training. Today we will cover the requirements for OPT as well as the application process itself. 1 second, my mouse is not working. Now it's working. Okay, so welcome to the session. My name is Leandro. With me is my colleague Valerie, and we will be working through this presentation. Again, if you have any questions, please submit it in the Q&A section. Please wait until the end of the presentation because maybe I answer your question with the information I'm providing today. If not, Valerie will make sure to answer your question by the end of the presentation, or I will be answering your questions. I will leave enough time for that later. So as I mentioned before, today we will introduce the topic of OPT, optional practical training, for those graduating in spring 2023. That doesn't mean this presentation doesn't apply to every other graduate or students graduating in other terms, but the dates will be mostly for spring graduates or only for spring graduates. So if you're graduating in summer or fall, the dates will vary, but the information will be in general the same. We will talk about the post-OPT timeline and what you need to do to apply for OPT, for post-completion OPT, and very importantly, requesting your OPT I-20 endorsement. You cannot apply for OPT without Bechtel endorsing your request through an I-20 OPT endorsement. This is very important because if you submit your application without it, your application will be denied. We will review the documents needed for an application, for an OPT application, basically the I-765 and the online filing, which now includes premium processing component. And finally, a quick announcement about remote working information that is very important for people graduating at the end of spring. So let's start with the general information of OPT. All this information, everything I'm gonna talk about today, and all the information regarding OPT and applying for OPT can be found at bechtel.stanford.edu. Or OPT page, post-completion page that you can see on the screen includes all the information that I'm going to be presenting today and even more, all the resources that you need to submit your application. So if you have any doubt, I strongly recommend you to go there first. And if the answer is not there, you can always come back and talk to us and we will clarify any doubt that you have. This video, a recording of this presentation, will be available at this page. Once we finish the presentation, we will upload it. Of course, please allow a couple of days for us to process that. And then it will be posted online for you to watch it or rewatch it. Next, I would like to talk about some resources that you can find before you submit your application. It's very important that you review these resources. The first one is a USCIS checklist that give you all the documents and information that you need to have before you submit your application. Tips to file your I-765. This is a long form. It's a USCIS form that has a lot of details that you need to include, very, very precise information that you need to provide. And we give you some tips about how to file that form online. And finally, a review of the checklist, the application materials, what you need to provide, is also available at bechtel.stanford.edu. So I recommend you to check those three pieces of information, those three documents before you submit an application. Next, I would like to talk about the part two of this. As I mentioned at the beginning, there's two parts of this presentation. The first one is the one happening today, but the next one will be on Monday, March 20th, 2023 at 4 p.m. It will be also through Zoom. It's a part two post-OPT completed application review and Q&A. This second part of the presentation will be for you to come with a complete OPT application. Once you have all the application materials, once you have reviewed all the information and have everything ready, you can come and talk to us, and we will clarify any doubt that you have before you submit your application. If you want to check this information, if you want to have the link for this presentation and the information on when it's happening, you can follow the QR code that we have on the screen, and it will take you to our workshop page. Next, as I mentioned before, if all the information that we have on Bechtel Connect still doesn't answer your question, you can always contact us. The main way you can contact us via email. internationalstudent@stanford.edu is the email address that you should use to contact us. Please always include your student ID and service ID. This makes our life so very easy, because it helps us identify your case. Sometimes some students may have similar names, or we may not know if the question that you have is for a current student or a graduate or alum. So using your student ID number, we can find your information way faster. Also, we have virtual advising sessions via Zoom happening every day from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. on Zoom. You can make an appointment using the QR code that you see on the screen. But additionally, we have afternoon drop-in advising in the post room here at Bechtel, from Monday to Fridays from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. More information can be found at Bechtel.stanford.edu. Before we continue, please note that you must be in the US by the time that you submit your application. Even though this application is completely online, you are required to be in the US when you submit your application. You cannot apply from outside of the US. So if you have plans to travel abroad, I would recommend you to first complete your submission, your OPT application, and then leave the US. Applying from outside of the US may have long-lasting negative impact on your application. Your application can be rejected or denied in this case, and you may not be able to reapply. Next, let's talk about the timeline for OPT. The post-completion OPT timeline for students graduating at the end of spring is based on the conferral date. So the first thing you need to know is, when is your conferral date? If you're graduating at the end of spring, the conferral date is June 18, 2023. That should be the same date on your I-20. If it's not, don't worry. If it's later, means that you have more time on your I-20. We need to shorten it. If it's less than that, if your I-20 is ending at the end of winter, but you're graduating actually in spring, I would recommend you to touch base with an advisor to figure out if you need an extension. Most likely you need one, but please talk with one of us before you submit a request so we can clarify any doubt that you may have. The application process for OPT, according to USCIS, starts 90 days before the conferral date. But we can start issuing, and we will actually start issuing your I-20 100 days before your conferral date. That's today. Today, we are officially starting to process OPT endorsement for spring 2023. So I will recommend you that after this presentation, if you have all the documents that you need and all the information that you need to apply, you apply for your OPT endorsement I-20. The processing time is between 5 to 10 business days. So please be patient, submit your application, we will review it and process it as soon as possible. Then we go to the official USCIS date to submit your application. The first 100 days is for you to request an endorsed I-20 from us. Then once you get the I-20, you have to wait until 90 days before the conferral date, which is March 20th, in 10 days. On March 20th is when you can submit your application to USCIS. Please make sure to submit your application on March 20th and not before that. If you submit too early, you have the risk to be denied because you will be applying before the or out of the window, the application window. Bechtel also strongly encourage students to apply for the I-20 or to apply for OPT, sorry, with an I-20 that is not older than 14 days. The reason is because the endorsement on the I-20 expires. If you apply with an I-20 that was endorsed a long time ago, you have the risk to be also denied. So once you receive your I-20, we encourage you to apply within 14 days. Your request for employment must be between the dates of June 19, 2023 and August 17, 2023. That means you can choose your start date. You can choose the day that you want to start working on OPT, but this day has to be within the 60 days of grace period after the end of your program. Since the end of your program is June 18, 2023, the start date needs to be chosen within June 19 to August 17, 2023. Next, let's talk about what are some of the reasons you may choose one date of the other for the start date. Some people may want to start as soon as they graduate. Some students may want to start on June 19th because they finish with the program and they want to start working immediately. That's a good reason that you want to start working. Other students may want to take more time to find a job. If you don't have one already lined up, you may want to choose a later start date. So when you're deciding when you start your OPT, you have to ask yourself these questions. Is there a job offer already? You have a job waiting for you? If you have a job and there's a start date on that job, you already have your choice. Are you confident that you will be finding jobs soon? Because if you think that you want to wait a little more before you start working, you may postpone your start date the latest possible. Some students may want to take time off after graduation, right? You don't want to start working immediately. You want to take a couple of days, maybe travel within the country, or maybe taking a vacation. That's a good reason to postpone your start date, but it's always your choice. As long as it's within the dates that USCIS is allowed, June 19 to August 17, you will be fine. Please note that you choose the start date when you request the I-20 from us. And once you submit this I-20 to USCIS, you cannot change the start date. That start date is the one that you requested, and you will need to wait until USCIS approve it before you start working, but you cannot change it. The end date of your OPT will be 1 year minus 1 day into the future. Every single student is getting 1 year of OPT. Some of you may be on a STEM degree, which means that you are eligible to apply, or you may be eligible to apply for a STEM extension, but that's a different procedure. Right now, the first year of OPT is the same for everybody. You apply for 1 year, and then if you are eligible to extend, you request for an extension. Next, let's talk about applying for OPT. The first thing you need to do to apply for OPT is apply to graduate. You need to have a graduation application in your access page before you can submit your OPT request. So for those who are just completing the form at Bechtel Connect, please hold your horses and apply for graduate first. Then once you apply for graduate and have a screenshot of your graduation request, you can come back to Bechtel and submit your OPT endorsement request. You go to Bechtel Connect and look for the icon that says OPT request. I want to talk about that in a couple of minutes. After you submit your application for the OPT I-20, you put together the application using the USCIS checklist. You have to gather some documents. I will be talking about that in a minute. And then you review your complete application package using the final review checklist, the PDF that is also available at our webpage, before you submit your application online. This is an online application. All the documents that you want to gather, you're going to digitally upload it into the USCIS online system, and that's how you submit your application. Next, let's talk about how to request the OPT I-20 itself. The process is through Bechtel Connect. For most of you, you should be familiarized with Bechtel Connect at this point. And you will be going to the section, the My Student Home, the section where all the request icons are located, and look for the OPT request with the little briefcase icon on it, and click that form, complete it, and submit it. That's the way you request an I-20 from Bechtel. For those who are not familiarized, you need to go into our webpage Bechtel.stanford.edu, or you can go directly to Bechtel Connect Stanford.edu and log in. You need to use your Sonnet credential to enter into the platform, so it will take you to your particular profile. Once you're there, you go to the fourth option of the Bechtel Connect page, which is My Student Home, and there is when you can find the OPT request form. That's the form that you will be submitting. You will be using to apply for the OPT I-20. Remember, this is the first step. The second step is submitting your application. Once you are there, this is the form. This is the way it looks. You have to go through all the stages, 1 to 6. Well, it's at 6 here, but it's actually 7. And you will first review all the information. The links to the OPT information are there. And once you move to the second page, you need to take an OPT quiz. This OPT quiz is a verification of the information we're providing today, and is also at the web page. So you need to complete the quiz in order to demonstrate that you have reviewed all the information and that you are aware of all the details of the OPT application. This quiz is required for you to continue your application process. Next, you're gonna review all the information that is provided in the overview page, confirm that you understand all the information, and you're gonna enter your start and end date. Here's when you decide when you want to start OPT, and also you put your end date, which is 1 year minus 1 day into the future. Then you need to confirm that you apply for graduation, submit the confirmation that you apply for graduation. Next step, give me one number here. You will need to complete the information regarding your post-completion OPT application. So first, you choose what type of OPT you're applying for, post-completion OPT. You need to start you need to submit the start date again. You need to tell us the end date, and also whether this is part-time or full-time. OPT is full-time. Pre-completion OPT may be part-time or full-time, but post-completion OPT is always full-time, so please choose full-time. Finally, you want to make a statement when you want to explain what is the field in which you will be working for OPT. This should be the field you're graduating from. If you have any questions regarding that, please contact us and we will be happy to help you more. These remarks help us to identify your OPT application in the I-20. Next is when you upload the proof that you're graduating. Again, it's a screenshot of your access page where it says that you apply for graduation. And finally, the last step, you submit your application. Once you click submit, it will come to Bechtel. We will receive a notification that you apply, and we will review your application. If all the information is correct, we will post it on your CVIS record and issue a new I-20 for you. This will be the same I-20 as the one that you have, with the remark that you are endorsed for OPT. We will determine your eligibility and also include your OPT start and end date. As you can see here, there's another QR code. This will take you to the USCIS online filing checklist. I encourage you to just go there and check the information. This information can be found also at our webpage. So if you don't have time to scan the QR code, you can always check this later. But if you scan it, you will be redirected to the USCIS online filing checklist. Next, let's talk about what is this checklist? What you need to do? What you need to provide? Well, the first thing you need to do is provide a form I-765. This form used to be a paper-based form that you can submit, and actually the paper-based form still exists, but now this form can be also filed online. It's the same name, I-765, but this is an online form. Once you create your account at USCIS, you will be able to see the forms that are available online, and you will select the I-765. That's the form that you need to complete at USCIS to submit your application. You will need a digital version of passport style photo, 2 inches by 2 inches. So right now, this is digital, so you only need one of those, and you can use an app to get this photo. There's some apps that replicate the exact measurements of a passport size picture, and also the dimensions that the picture requires. But if you want to take a physical photo and then scan it, that's also possible. You will need a PDF of your most recent I-94. Your I-94 is your entry and exit record from the US. You can Google I-94 and find your I-94 record. You just download a PDF version of your most recent I-94 because you need it for this application. A PDF of your passport bio page, a PDF of previous CPT and OPT endorsed I-20s. You may have several I-20s, and I imagine that every time you met with a international advisor, you heard that you need to keep your all I-20s for the future. Well, now is the time. Now is when you need to provide all the I-20s that have any significant information regarding your OPT or CPT. If you previously had OPT or CPT, those I-20s are needed for this application. Next, PDF of the OPT endorsed I-20. As I mentioned before, you need to do the first step, which is requesting the I-20 from us, and then you will use it to apply. And finally, the payment or the fee that is required for this application. This is a payment the USCIS require for you to submit. Is currently $410. This may change in the future, but as of today, is $410 that you will be paying with a US-based bank account or credit card at the moment of the submission. So once you complete the forms, it will take you to a payment page on the system and will allow you to make the payment. Once you make the payment, the submission will be completed. Some tips for the application process. Please do not file this application without the OPT endorsed I-20. If you do so, you will be denied. Do not submit more than 90 days before the degree conferral date. Again, if you submit too early, you also will be denied. The online system uses UTC, or Coordinated Universal Time. So if you're planning on submitting your application, please don't do it too close to the midnight time, because the time may be in the future and or in the past, and you may submit too early or too late. So try to do it using the UTC, the Coordinated Universal Time, and on the date that you are required to do it. If you have only one name, list your last name as last name. This is very important because otherwise your name may be printed wrongly in the card, and replacing the card will cost you $410. So try to make sure not to mess up with the names by splitting your first name or using putting your first name in your last name. Make sure that someone will be able to receive mail at the address that you choose for this application for the next 6 months. This means that when you submit the application, you need to submit a mailing address, and that mailing address, one, must be in the US, and second, has to be, you should be able to get mail there for the next 6 months. Your EAD card, the document that is printed when you get approved for OPT, will be mailed to that address that you provide. If you select an address that you cannot get mail from, there's a risk that you're going to lose the card, and if that happens, you will need to reapply. So I recommend you to use either the place you live in, and if you are moving and you don't know where, try to use a friend that can receive your mail for the next 6 months. Next, students have reported using the passport apps for the picture. As I mentioned before, some people can use their cell phone, download an app that mimics the dimensions that you need for the passport size picture. But if you want to take a physical picture, you can go out to a place that takes US passport size photos and scan it using a scanner. Please do not take a picture of the photo, because if the dimensions are not correct, the lighting or any other characteristics that the system requires, your application may be rejected. Payment must be made via a U.S. financial institution or credit card issued by the U.S. financial institution. You cannot pay with a foreign credit card, or bank account. USCIS only takes payments from US-based institutions. So please be aware of that when you're submitting your payment. As I mentioned before, as of today, the application for USCIS is $410. However, this may change. Please use the page that you can see on your screen, uscis.gov, I-765, to confirm the amount that you need to pay. Each form has their own fee. What is next? Banks accounts and routing numbers must be drawn from US financial information. Credit card or debit cards are accepted, Visa, MasterCard. USCIS won't process a credit card from a foreign bank. So please do not use these methods. The evidence that you need to submit, the US passport style photo I mentioned before. This must be 600 times 600 pixels. So if the quality of the picture is not very good, your application may be rejected. Also, this picture must be taken within the last 6 months. And I know many of you may be asking yourself, how do they know? Well, we don't know that, but if they figure it out, they will reject your application. And actually, I personally had a case of a student who submitted the same picture he used for his visa application. He had to submit his documents. In the past, they used to submit visa copies, and the officer just saw that the picture was the same and reject your application. So please just take a new picture. Don't use old pictures, and follow all the requirements for the USCIS passport style picture. Check the guidelines on the passport styles on the webpage that you can see. Next, the form I-94. You can download it from i94.cbp.dhs.gov. If you have a hard time copying this address, just Google I-94. The first page you're going to see is most likely the CBP page where you can get your I-94 record. If you have any questions about that, please email us. Also, you must submit any employment authorization document or government ID, previously owned government ID, copy of your passport with the bio page. If applicable, if you had an EAD card from a previous OPT or previous type of work authorization, please provide a copy with your application. Previously authorized CPT or OPT, post-completion OPT only, of course. All the I-20s with information regarding this OPT or CPT, please provide them with your application. And finally, a copy of the new OPT endorsed I-20. Make sure that it's signed on the first page. In the section when you need to sign, please make sure that it's signed before submitting. This form is valid only for a certain time, so please do not wait too long until you submit it. We recommend you 14 days tops. More about evidence. The quality of the images is not specified. However, they must be clear and readable. So if the documents are not clear or the information cannot be read, they might be rejected. You can see on the screen the accepted file formats. Please not encrypted or password protected files, otherwise those documents won't be reviewed and your application may be rejected. If the documents are in a foreign language, you will need to upload also a full English translation for these documents. Upload no more than 5 documents at a time, and the accepted file name characters will be English letters, numbers, spaces, periods, hyphens, underscores, and parentheses. The maximum size of a file has to be 6 megabytes per file. Next, let's talk about premium processing. This is fairly new. We just learned about this last Monday, and is still in implementation phase. So beginning on March 6th, USCIS announced that beginning on March 6th, they will be accepting premium processing for F1 students who are filing applications for post-completion OPT, pre-completion OPT, and also the STEM extension. The premium processing is expedite processing request that you can submit alongside with your application that provides you with a faster processing of your request. We don't have many details about this yet because we haven't had any so far. The process just started, but certainly there is a fee for this, which is $1,500. So it's an additional fee. So we will wait to see if that makes sense for students to submit this type of application, because so far the application has been so fast that we don't think that has been necessary. Oh, I mean, I don't know. Honestly, I have to wait and see. The announcement says that the expedite processing will be up to 30 days. I don't know how slow will be the regular processing. But we need to wait. But if you are in a rush for your application to be processed, I recommend you to contact us so we can discuss whether or not the premium processing works for you. So the way it works is beginning March 6th, USCIS will accept the form I-907 for requests that has been submitted already from March 6th. To request expedite processing for applications that are already pending. So that means that if you submit an application from March 6th, OPT application, you can file the I-907 to expedite that request. But that request must be in pending status. You cannot submit both forms concurrently until April 3rd. Starting on April 3rd, USCIS will accept the form I-907 concurrently with your I-765. That means that starting, if you plan to apply after April 3rd, you can submit your I-765 and then submit the I-983 immediately after. Another note that you need to be aware of is that for this submission, you need the receipt notice. So regardless of when you apply, you will need to wait until you submit your I-765, and then once you get the receipt notice from that application, you can submit your I-709. If you have more questions, please feel free to email us, and we will give you all the information that we have regarding this premium processing. Next, let's talk about online filing. Once you have your I-20, once you have gathered all the application materials, what you need to do? Well, you need to go to USCIS online. The webpage is actually myaccount.uscis.gov. You will get to a screen like this where you need to create an account unless you already have one. If you have applied for any other benefit online, any other immigration benefit online, or if you have applied for OPT before using this system, you may have an account. But if you don't, you will need to create a new one. Create an account, access by logging in into My USCIS. And once you're there, you're going to choose, you're going to submit a new application. You have to specify that you are the applicant, petitioner, or requester. That means you are applying by yourself. You are not applying through a lawyer, a company, or an agency. You're applying by yourself. Once you do that, you choose the file a form online, and you choose the I-765 form. That's the form that corresponds to post-completion OPT. The instructions on the I-765, I cannot cover the whole form. It's a 7-page form, very long with many details, but we have these instructions at our webpage. So if you scan the QR code that you can see right now, you will go to those instructions where you're going to see step by step what, for example, what is your eligibility category for post-completion OPT C3B, student on post-completion OPT, and also what is the reason for you applying, initial permission to accept employers. This is the way that the instructor is telling you what to answer in every question. So please scan the QR code. If you don't have time, or you cannot scan it now, you can always go back to the Stanford.edu, look for the OPT information, and you will find those instructions there too. Next, I want to talk about remote working. Recently, I mean, since the pandemic started, USCIS released regulations that allow students to work remotely from outside of the US while they were in OPT and CPT. We are expecting this to sunset by June this year. It means that this regulation will end in June this year, and we are not expecting this to be renewed. Of course, we are waiting for USCIS final word on this matter, but from our perspective, we want to make sure that you are aware that this will change or may change in the future. So we want you to know that you should be prepared to return to the US or work from the US. In this case, if you're applying for OPT starting in June, most likely by that time, this rule already will be modified. So you should be expecting that you will need to work from within the US. That remote working from a remote office within the US is a different story, but at least working from outside of the US while you are in OPT is something that we don't expect to be extended. Of course, if anything changed on that front, we will make sure to notify you via our newsletter. But so far, our expectation is that by June this year, this regulation will be replaced by a pre-pandemic rule, which didn't allow to work remotely while you were in post-completion OPT. Going back to our part 2 presentation, remember this was part 1, but this is part 1 of the presentation. Part 2 will be a Q&A session in which you can bring your questions after reviewing all the information, all the QR codes that I provide today. If you still have any question, if there's something that is not clear, you can always come back. This will happen on March 20th at 4 p.m. Come back to us with those questions. We will be happy to answer. We cannot review the whole application. We cannot go step by step with you while you're applying, but we can give you answers to a specific question that you may have. Please check the QR code that you have on the screen. This will take you to the workshop page when you can see when and how to access those sessions. Additionally, please save the date for the maintaining legal status session while you're in OPT. This has happened for spring graduates. This will be May 1st. This will cover all the information that you need to know for when you are on OPT. The rules that apply for international students, what you need to do in order to maintain your status as an F1 student while in OPT. Please remember, you are still on F1. You still need to comply with F1 regulations while you are in OPT. You're just using your optional practical training, which is a benefit of your F1 status. Also, we will have a Visas Beyond Stanford session, but this is to be determined. Please be aware of, please check our newsletter and we will notify you then. Again, this is still the QR code for you to go to the workshops, where is the page where all the sessions will be published. And finally, thank you. And if you have any questions, I will be happy to answer. So let me open the QR code. I'm gonna stop recording now, I guess. Oh, well, Valerie, do you think we have enough questions?
I think we can keep recording.
Okay.
Because we do have a lot of questions.
Great. Okay, let's go through the questions.
Do you want me to ask? I can ask the questions.
Yeah, that would be good.
And then you can answer, Leandro. We're getting a lot of questions about how do they get past I-20s with CPT and OPT. How do they get copies?
Okay, yes. Well, the first option that I will give you is in your records. I mean, Bechtel Connect has a document section where we post all your documents. Every time we issue an I-20 for you, we upload it there. Those I-20 should be there because that's the place where you got them from. So please check there. If you don't find it, let us know because we might have them in our files, but most likely they will be there.
Awesome. Is it possible to do a full-time remote job for a US company during your OPT and then travel in and out of the US? during the OPT year.
Okay, so this question is you are working for a US company, and I'm just stating again to make sure that I have the right information. So the student will be working for a US company in the US remotely. I mean, from home or from an office in the US, from another office in the US. We're going to be traveling outside of the US. The answer will be yes if the job requires you to travel. If that's part of your job duties, yes, you may travel. However, if your job requires you to be all the time outside of the US, or the nature of the job maybe is outside of the US, there's the risk when you enter back to the US that the officer at the border consider that you don't need OPT for this job because you're working full-time outside of the US. And again, the rule that allows you to work remotely from outside of the US is ending most likely in June. So I think that if your job will be totally happening outside of the US and you need to stay there for a long period of time, it's not possible during OPT.
Perfect. We're also getting the question a lot about, can I travel outside the US after I've applied for the OPT while I'm waiting for it to be approved?
That's a great question, very common. So the answer is that it depends. Technically speaking, yes, you can travel. There's nothing preventing you from traveling, but our recommendation is you should travel when you have your documents in your hand. That means when you apply for OPT, you're waiting for your documents to come. Once you've passed your conferral date, you're no longer active students taking classes. So the key element here is, what is the reason why you will be coming back to the US? While you are pending for OPT, you can come back saying, I'm coming back to wait for my OPT to be approved. And that's great. That's a totally okay answer. The problem is the officer might ask for your receipt notice, but not the problem. The consequence will be the officer will ask you for the receipt notice. But if you are outside of the US and your OPT gets approved while you're there, your document will be mailed to your address in the US. You won't have the document. When you come from through the border, the officer most likely will ask you for the EAD card because you already got approved. If you don't have it, they may deny you entry. Some students may just ask a friend to get the card and send it over. If you have that option, that could work. But the worst case scenario is if you get an RSV or a rejection. If you get an RSV, you need to answer that RSV from within the US. If you get a rejection, you need to reapply within the US. If you're outside of the US, you cannot come back and reapply, because most likely when you try to enter through the border, the officer will say, your OPT application was rejected, you cannot re-enter. So you will lose your ability to reapply if you are outside of the US when this happened. How likely is this to happen? I cannot tell, but that's the risk that you may be taking. So our recommendation is, try, if possible, try to wait until you get your EAD card in the hand, and then you can travel.
Yeah, I think the biggest issue that students don't realize is if you leave the US after your degree conferral date and for some reason your OPT is denied, then you lose the ability to reapply because you've left the US. So that's kind of the biggest risk of leaving after the graduation date.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. Let's see. Same question. Question, what is the I-907? I'm not sure.
Oh, yeah. The I-907 is another online form that is used to request the premium processing. Basically, a form in which you are requesting USCIS to expedite your I-765 form. Again, for those who are submitting your application before April 3rd, you can submit your I-765 like any other person, and then request the expedite processing later. But for those who are submitting their application on April 3rd, you can submit one form after the other. The key element here is you need to have your receipt notice because you have to link your I-907 to your I-765.
Awesome, thank you. Let's see, can we do hybrid work while on OPT?
Sorry, I didn't hear the first part of the question.
can we do hybrid work while on OPT?
Hybrid work. If hybrid work mean coming 1 or 2 days to the office, yes, as long as you are in the US, it should be fine because you're working for a US company in the US and the company has offices here. So I don't see any issue unless it's a specific hybrid mode that I don't know about.
Awesome. A lot of questions about if you have more than one, can you have more than one job while on OPT?
Yes, you can have one more than one job while you are in OPT. The regulations explain that you need to have at least a full-time job, more than 20 hours per week. All jobs must be related to your degree, the degree that you're pursuing, and all jobs must be appropriate for your degree level. But besides that, there's no restriction on how many jobs you can have. So, as I used to say, you can exploit yourself as much as you want.
Nice. How will we tell you about these jobs? Can you explain maybe the portal a little bit?
Oh yes. Well, this will be probably covered in the maintaining legal status where you're an OPT in detail. But yes, once you are approved for OPT, you're gonna receive a link. This link usually comes when you are or usually no, always comes on the day that you're supposed to start OPT. You're gonna receive a link from USCIS that will allow you to create a SCBP portal. That portal will allow you to submit your employment information. So the responsibility to inform the government that you are working on OPT is on you, and you have to provide that information to USCIS within 10 days of each change. Once you get the job, within 10 days, you need to submit the information. And if there's a change, you change jobs, you add another job, you add that information. Please never delete anything from USCIS, because even if you quit a job, you should just add the end date, not delete the information.
Another question about being outside the US while on OPT. Is there a certain amount of dates you're allowed to be outside the US while on OPT?
There's no specific rule about that. Being outside of the US, I mean, in the past, I remember there was considered that after 5 months you abandon your status, but that rule actually, I mean, is not actually advisable to stay that long outside of the US either way. I would say that this depends. I usually tell students when the times when you pass the border is when you have the possibility to be questioned. And every time you enter the US, the officer at the border will ask questions. And if you've been outside of the US for a significant amount of time, and again, I cannot tell you, this could be a month or 3 months or 2 months, it depends on the officer mostly. They will ask you, why were you outside of the US? And you have to explain. If the officer thinks that you spend too much time, again, I don't have a specific amount of time, he may not let you in, and that will mean not being able to continue using your OPT, or they may even revoke your OPT on the spot. So I would say, if you need to travel for work, document that information so you can demonstrate that this is the case. But if you spend significant amount of time, be prepared to answer questions, because they might not consider that you are meeting your OPT or maintaining your OPT status.
Will I need, no, that's a different one, sorry. Oh, can I work on my own startup while on OPT?
Great question. During the first year of post-completion OPT, during this year of post-completion OPT, yes, you can be self-employed. You can work for your own company as a freelancer, as an independent contractor on short-term contracts. Yes, you can report employment as a self-employed. The exam extension is a different story, and we will cover that in a specific presentation for exam. But during this first year of OPT, yes, you can be self-employed.
If I will be moving in the next few months, should I use my current address or my new address?
You should use an address where you can get mail for the next 6 months, regardless of where is it. You don't have to live there. Doesn't have to be your living address. but you should be able to get mail there. If you can get mail in your current address, you can keep it. If you can get mail in the new address earlier or friend address the whole time, you should use that address.
Right. What is the current ETA for OPT applications?
That's the question that we actually been discussing. Right now, we're getting we're getting 2 weeks applications when actually it's creating issues for students who were expecting more time. The average time that we've been seeing was 45 to 60 until recently. The official waiting time in the webpage is 2 months, 60 days. But again, they just released a statement that the premium processing will be 30. So I don't know, because if the regular processing is less than 30 days, that doesn't make sense to do premium processing, right? So right now, as of today, I would say 45 to 60 days tops. After the premium processing enters in effect on April 3rd, I cannot foresee. So you should be prepared to even wait 90 days, because I don't know if that will be the case. Honestly, we don't have enough data to tell you as of today.
All right. We already answered that one. Can I apply for OPT while planning to join a company based in the US, which will be founded only after June?
Yes, one key element of OPT is this is a benefit of your F1 status. That means you don't need to, it's not tied to an employer. You can apply for OPT and get your post-completion OPT approved and even your start date approved without an employer. You can even look for jobs while you're in OPT. The key element here that I didn't mention in this presentation is that you have 90 days of unemployment while you are in OPT. That means that within the year of OPT, the 12 months of OPT, you have 90 days of unemployment. So you can apply for OPT without an employer, get your OPT without an employer, get to your start date without an employer, and then report an employer later. So if the company doesn't exist yet, as long as it exists by the time that you're reporting the company, should be fine.
A lot of questions about what if my visa expires this summer and I want to leave the US afterwards? What happens?
Okay, so first, please note that you don't need to have a valid visa to apply for OPT. Your visa may expire and you are allowed to apply for OPT and remain in the US. You only need a new visa if you decide to travel abroad and come back. That said, when you apply for a new visa, you need to show your I-20, and your I-20 will say that you are, the validity of your I-20 will end on June 18th. So if you go today to an embassy, the officer may say, you only need a visa until June 18th. So if your visa is expiring in summer, you don't need a new visa. Some students have applied with I-20s that says OPT application pending. That means that after you apply, you may go and apply for the visa, but I don't recommend it because there's a lot of uncertainty there. Even though most likely you're going to get your OPT, the embassy official wants something more solid. So my recommendation is, if your visa is going to expire, don't travel past your expiration date until you get your OPT approved. Because with that approval, at least the officer of the embassy will know that you have 1 more year in the US based on your OPT, and your application will be smoother.
Nice. Can you work as a freelancer in your field of study, or do you have to have an actual employer?
I think I already talked about that, but yeah, yes, you can be self-employed, freelancing. The only problem that I see with freelancing is that your reporting will be a little more complicated. You have to make sure to keep track of your hours, payments, then the projects, all that you're doing. But basically, yes, you can be self-employed. It's just that you have to keep track of all the information that HR or a company will normally take care of, including taxes. You will need to take care of your own taxes. But yeah, freelancing is possible during the first year of post-completion OPT.
Do I need a lawyer to fill out OPT, or do most students do it themselves?
Most students do it by themselves. But no, you don't need a lawyer.
Sorry, I'm trying to figure out which ones we already answered.
Yeah, no, don't worry. Just ask me.
Okay, already answered that one. What if I don't have a job or intern? We already talked about this. If you don't have a job or internship, when is the latest I can apply?
The latest that you can apply, and the application period goes 90 days before the conferral date and up to 60 days after. So the latest date that you could apply is, technically speaking, August 17. I don't recommend you to do that for two reasons. One, if you apply on August 17 and you miss the time, you apply too late, the application will be denied. Second, if you submit your application and 2 weeks later, USCIS notice that your picture doesn't have the quality, they will reject you and you won't have time to reapply. So it's risky to apply the very last day. Also, the day that you will submit as your start date will be also August 17. If you apply on the same day, there's no time for them to approve you before your start date. So most likely you won't end up working later, which may impact your ability to start working for your company. So I would say the latest is August 17. I recommend you to apply at least 2 weeks before that date.
If I do not receive my EAD card before my start date, can I still start the job?
No, you need to have your EAD card in hand before you can start the job.
Can I change the start date after I have submitted to USCIS?
No, you cannot. Once you submit it to USCIS, that start date is linked to that application, and you will need to withdraw the application, which I don't recommend anybody to do that because the withdrawal process takes more than 90 days, which is probably less than the time that will take for them to approve it. So no, you cannot.
If I get OPT, will my spouse's F2 status also continue?
Yes, your spouse's is your spouse is not getting OPT. They are not authorized to work, but their status will be extended as well. As long as you are in F1 status, your spouse will be on F2 status.
Is it okay to apply for H-1B while on OPT?
There's no restriction on applying for H-1B since both applications are non-immigrant based. There's no contradiction. So yes.
If I move and forward my mail, would that cause a problem?
That's a question for USPS. I have done forward mailing myself in the past, and it works fairly well. But my concern is if your card gets lost in the mail, you may need to reapply. So it's a risk. It's possible, according to USPS, because they will be sending everything to the new address. But if for some reason they don't send that piece and you get lost, you might need to reapply for the card.
Let's see next. Let's see. Can I start working once the OPT is approved, or do I have to wait for the EAD card?
You have to wait for the EAD card, and very important too, the start date. So if your EAD card arrives before your start date, you have to wait until the start date. If your start date, if you reach your start date but your EAD card is not here, you're gonna start working. So you need to wait.
This is a good one. If I graduate this June, can I take a 1-year break and then apply for OPT?
That's a great question. The answer is no. You can only apply for OPT right after your program ends, within the 90 days before or 60 days after your conferral date.
A lot of questions from students who are planning on going on spring break, and they want to know when they should submit their Bechtel request.
They can submit the Bechtel request today. The spring break wouldn't affect you in any way because until June 18, you're still a student. So the same rules apply, the same requirements for you to travel in and out. Even if your application is pending, until June 18, there's no reason for you to be concerned with your application. You can submit your application before you leave for spring break. After you come back, is the same.
Yeah, I feel like just remember that you have to submit it within 14 days of us giving you the I-20.
Correct.
So if you are planning to leave, I don't know, the 25th or something, and we give you or maybe like the 20th, and we give you your I-20 on the 20th, you need to make sure you get back within 14 days to submit it.
That's true. That's true. You have to be strategic that if you get the I-20 while you're outside of the US, then you will not be able to submit your application until you come back. So that I-20 may not be valid anymore for OPT application. Thank you, Valerie.
How closely related does your job need to be to your field of study?
Close enough for you to be able to defend that statement. So basically what I tell them is there's no guidance on how a job can be related to your degree, because I mean, honestly, I'm not an expert on career matters on how to connect the job with your degree. Most likely your professors or the team at your department may be able to give you more explanation than me. But in general, I would say, and this is something I got from a career advisor once, he told me, if you look at your job description and your curriculum and the skills, at least the majority of the skills that you are applying on your job are things that you learned during your program, that's a match. So at the end of the day, it depends on your ability to defend that statement. If a USCIS officer inquires about how it's related, you should be able to explain it in a way that is convincing for someone that doesn't know anything about that job. So that's the official answer.
Let's see. Can you earn money on a YouTube channel if not related to your course of study?
That's a tricky question. I would say that's unless you can report it for OPT, that will be not part of your work authorization. So that will be I would recommend you to touch base with an immigration advisor on that, but it's definitely not something that you're allowed to do during OPT unless you can report it as a job in OPT. And for that, it needs to be related to your degree.
Yeah. Answered. Is it okay for your spouse to leave the US for a long time while you're on OPT?
Yeah, your spouse is not required to be here at all. So yes, your spouse may travel as long as her F2 I-20 is valid and her visa is valid.
Awesome. Right. Answered.
Again, if there's a question that we don't answer today, is past 5, so if many people need to leave, feel free to email us at an international student to Stanford the EU. But first, I recommend you to go to our webpage, because again, all the information or most of the information that I'm providing today is written down there. We basically taking the information from the page. So if your question is not answered there, you can email us, but most likely your concern is something that happened to a student before, and we already put it in the Q&A or in the text of the OPT section. So that will be a great resource for you.
All right. I feel like we probably mentioned this before, but if I have a full-time job related to my major while on OPT, can I then work other non-major related part-time jobs?
The part-time is correct. Yes, you could have a part-time job if you have one full-time job already. But the non-related is the part that doesn't qualify. For OPT, every single job that you have must be related. That means that if you have let's say your major is computer science and you have a job at a company related to computer science, you cannot be a barista on the side because that doesn't qualify for OPT. So I would say the part-time, yes. Not related, no.
Okay. Can you still use auto revalidation to go to Canada and Mexico while you're waiting for the OPT?
Yes, but be aware that again, when you're entering the officer will ask you about your OPT status or your status, and you should be able to provide proof of your current status, which means if you're pending, you should be able to provide a receipt notice. Your I-20 must be valid. You must have a travel signature that is valid for at least 6 months, and well, in this case, your visa can be expired. But if your OPT gets approved when you are in Canada, you will need the EAD card to come back. So yes, you could use automatic revalidation, but it's risky.
Right. If we have a double degree, do we have to pick one degree to work in, or can we work in both? If
both degrees are reported on your I-20, the zip code, if you reported both degrees on your I-20, yes, you may work on both any of those.
Are we guaranteed to get the new I-20 by March 20th?
If you submit your application at least 10 days before March 20th, yes, you're guaranteed to have it.
All right. Can you still work remotely for a U.S. company while in the U.S.?
Remotely for a U.S. company while you're in the U.S. So far, yes. Until we get the new regulations, which I don't think it will eliminate remote work at all. I mean, within the U.S., like working from home, I don't think that will be covered, but so far, yes.
What should I do if I lost my old EAD cards from my other degree?
If you lost your EAD card, well, I hope you have a copy or a scan copy, because that you can provide that. But honestly, I would say that only USCIS can replace that card. Maybe make a statement on the remark section saying that you have a EAD card. I hope you have all the numbers, the alien number, the USCIS number, sorry, that it was written on the card. If you still have that number somewhere around your documents, you can probably provide that number on a statement in the remarks and say you lost the card, but the card was from this date to this date with this number, and hope that they don't question that fact.
Okay. Do we need to upload the visa page to USCIS?
I used to recommend that, but since the visa can expire, I don't think it's necessary.
All right. Already answered. I submitted my OPT endorsed I-20 request in Bechtel Connect already, but haven't received any confirmation. Is this normal?
Yes, we are not providing a confirmation of submissions. You can always see that your submission is in requested status at Bechtel Connect. So you can see the actual request is there. Submitted status, sorry, not request, submitted status. And we will start processing today. So if you submitted already, we will process it, but we will start today. So probably you have to count 5 to 10 business days from today. Once we process it, it will say approve, so you can monitor it there. But you will be notified once we approve. You will receive an email.
Okay. Given that I still don't know when I will start working, is it better to wait until the last minute to apply for OPT?
I think I mentioned this before, but I don't recommend people to wait until the last minute, because many things can go wrong with that. Obviously, if you are not confident that you're going to start working right after graduation, you can just delay your application. But again, I usually tell students at least apply, the maximum is 2 weeks before the application window ends, before August 17. If you want to delay your start date, that's the best thing that you can do. I mean, even I would recommend you to apply early and just set your start date in August 17.
Just in the last few minutes, we got quite a few questions about traveling while after you apply for OPT. Could you maybe just go over it one more time about like when you should and shouldn't travel?
Okay, so until June 18, your status is the same as it's been the last 5 years, 2 years, depending on your degree level. You may be here for 10 years already. You're an active student. And the key element here is to understand what is the reason for you to come back every time you come back. So until June 18, your reason to come back is to take classes. When you come through the border, you can tell the officer, I'm back here to take classes. So the rules that you should follow is the same that you have been following. After June 18 is when your status depends on your OPT application. So after June 18, if your application is still, if you haven't applied, I recommend you to apply, because you cannot leave the US without applying, otherwise you won't be able to come back. If you apply and your application is pending, you can travel, but it's risky, because if your application changes, either approved or rejected while you're outside of the US, you may not be able to come back. You will need to either get your EAD card if you're approved, mailed to you outside of the US, or if you're rejected, you cannot come back and reapply. And finally, if you're approved, you can travel outside of the US as long as you have a valid I-20, EAD card, the approval notice, I usually recommend it, and travel signature on your I-20 that is not older than 6 months. That's basically the rules for traveling while you're waiting for your OPT.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Leandro. We've answered most of the questions. I think there are a few questions that are just repeats, so we definitely have already answered them throughout the webinar. If you still have the question, you might want to go back and watch the webinar again, or make an appointment, or look on the OPT page of our website. Like Leandro said, almost all the questions you guys asked today the answers are on the OPT page of our website. There were a few very, very intricate questions that we didn't answer, who I think maybe be best if you just make an appointment with a student advisor. A few last minute questions. Are you able to, there's some questions about applying for other visas while on OPT, like the O1 or EB1. I would recommend you speak with an immigration attorney about that, because Bechtel doesn't do O1 or EB1, so we don't know a lot of the details. So any some H-1B questions, all H-1B questions, you should also ask to an immigration attorney, because Bechtel can't really help with H-1B. Can you still come to Bechtel to ask for travel signatures while on OPT and in the STEM extension?
Yeah,
Yes,
sure.
yes, of course, yeah. Bechtel is here for you the whole time you're on OPT in the STEM extension. So if you have questions during that time, you can still make appointments with Bechtel and walk into Bechtel. All right, I think that is about it for our questions. Like Leandro said, if you still have more questions, you can always make an appointment with us or send an email to internationalstudents@stanford.edu. And again, read over the OPT page of the website, because a lot of the questions can be answered on there.
Okay, I saw a question that says only SSN, Social Security number. So there is an option for you to apply for the Social Security number concurrently with your application. If you don't have a Social Security number, you will be able to apply for one with your I-765. But if you have a Social Security number already, you don't need to apply for anyone. You just use the old one. Do I need to renew my I-20 while on OPT? No renewal, not extension, because your OPT will be approved for the whole time that you apply for. So no need to renew your I-20 when you're on OPT.
But you do need to, anytime you travel, you need to make sure you look on page 2 of your I-20, because the travel signature on page 2 while you're on OPT is only good for 6 months. So if you are planning to travel and that signature is more than 6 months old, you do need to come to Bechtel and ask for a new signature.
Okay.
Some STEM application questions. I would recommend you go read over the STEM page of our website. We pretty much explain the whole process there.
Okay, I think we covered most of the questions.
If you're on OPT and you're not in California or the area, you can still ask for I-20 reprints through Bechtel Connect to get new travel signatures.
Once you're on OPT, you are able to get your I-20 reprint online.
Yep.
Okay. Should I wait? Okay, should I wait for April 3rd if I want to apply for premium processing? According to the announcement, no, you may submit your I-765 starting on the 20th, and then on April later submit your I-907. Sorry, this is a fairly new form for me. So it's not necessary to wait until April 3rd for your I-765. It's just that after April 3rd, you can submit both at the same time. So one after the other.
And is it guaranteed 30 days processing if you apply for the premium processing?
The announcement set up to 30 days. So I would say that if you pay $1,500, they might give you somehow guarantee, but we haven't had any experience with those applications yet. So I have no data to tell you how long it will take. Maybe a really fast process, maybe a 2 weeks process like it's been so far, or maybe 30 days sharp. I honestly don't know.
All right, I think that's all our questions.
Thank you very much for coming today and participating in this session. Again, please come to the second part of this presentation. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact us. I'll come to Bechtel. Thank you and have a nice weekend. Thank you, Valerie. Thank you, Miok.